What up? I mean, it's a noose, so I'm just gonna... Oh. That's a drop. That's a drop. Are you gonna... Don't. We're... You don't want it. No. Hold on. You don't want to do
This
this.
stainless steel signature edition blade will cut through anything, but it's not going to stick around long at the nice price of $19.99. So call in right now and get cutting.
Oh, gimme. Oh shit! Over the past week, I've had the pleasure of playing Bonelab, Stress Level Zero's sequel to Boneworks, and their third entry into their own universe. Anyway, Bonelab has been one of the most hyped up VR games to ever exist, with its predecessor, Boneworks, being the third best-selling VR game according to Steam. But now that the game is out, a lot of people, including myself, were a little disappointed. The main consensus seems to be that there are three major issues with the game: a lackluster and confusing campaign, janky physics and mechanics, and an overemphasis put on minigames as well as other game modes. When I did my first playthrough, I ran into the same three issues. The campaign was really not as interesting and entertaining as I thought it was going to be, and it took me over an hour to figure out how to get from level 2 to level 3. Plus, I ran into many issues regarding physics errors or clipping objects, and while the minigames are fun, it does seem a bit odd that the main menu puts such an emphasis on those other areas rather than the campaign. But that's just the thing, most people don't want a minigame collection. It seems like Stress Level Zero thought as though those minigames would bring more life into the game and extend its lifespan. Plus, if you look at Boneworks Online, you see that most of the media seems to be comprised of other game modes, sandbox, mods, and survival minigames. And that makes sense because it's far more entertaining to watch Spider-Man bash a catgirl's head in with a frying pan than it is to watch somebody stumble through a campaign which has lore more confusing and convoluted than modern Star Wars. It's totally understandable that Stress Level Zero wanted to make the game more about the game modes that made Boneworks so popular in the first place, rather than spend time making a campaign nobody would really care about. But just like how most people wouldn't want to play Minecraft if it only had creative mode, most people don't want to spend the time messing around in sandbox modes. They want to play an interesting campaign with pre-made scenarios that show off the unique areas and functionality of the game. And sure, that exists, and some of the levels are quite interesting, but there always feels like there could have been something done better with all of them. Take the moon level for instance. When I first loaded in, I was so excited to see how the low gravity environment would affect combat and puzzles. But instead I was greeted with a static environment with only the Gary's Mod spawn tool in front of me. There weren't any interesting or unique enemies, no special puzzles, nothing. It was just a fetch quest. Okay, that was easy. To me, it seems as though Bonelab was made for the sole purpose of putting Boneworks on the Quest as a standalone game. They just took the old Boneworks engine, gave it a fresh coat of paint, and re-released it. There's actually very little new content in the base game, and most of what is there is either repackaged stuff like official mod support, or stuff that could have been easily modded into the game in the first place. I think Stress Level Zero wanted to put Boneworks on the Quest, but didn't want to just re-release a 3-year-old game, so they just repackaged it with a little bit of new content to tie people over. Imagine how mad people would be if a game that was insanely popular years ago only now got ported to the Nintendo Switch. Oh. But my point still stands. This game feels like it was just made to satisfy the Quest owners, rather than actually put any effort into major improvements or additions into the VR space. Bonelab really just adds nothing to the already amazing and incredible gameplay and engine of Boneworks. But that's just the point. Boneworks is already a fantastic game, why change it? There's a reason that the saying, "if it ain't broke, don't fix it," exists. Boneworks, and consequently Bonelab, are amazing games that have some of the most unique and surreal game mechanics I have ever experienced in VR. Being able to move a body by pushing up on a table, or being able to grab an enemy by the head and slam them into the wall, or the fact that I can use a two-handed club to break down a wall, these are all things that are just not possible in most VR games. And after playing Bonelab for a while, I went back and played other games like VR Chat, and it just felt weird how my hand could clip into the wall, or how when I jump my legs don't bend from the landing. And the way that Boneworks, and consequently Bonelab, execute the experience is really good as well. There was never a moment I felt nauseous or a moment where I felt odd because my real life body was doing something different than my in-game body. In fact, there was a moment early on where I tried to put my controller down on an in-game table, only for me to realize that that table doesn't actually exist, prompting me to almost drop my controller. Hover my hands there for a sec. Uno momento. Bonelab is so immersive that it really feels like you're in another world. It allows the player to experience the game as if the in-game body was just an extension of your actual real-life body. In fact, I'd argue that it's immersive to a fault. Ow. That's... Yes, I even managed to cut my finger open playing this game. That's the first time I've ever caused myself an injury like this while playing VR. It's quite an accomplishment for Bonelab to be the only game so immersive it literally caused me to forget reality and injure myself. Alright, let's not hit the chair this time. Even with its faults, Bonelab is an amazing game. Yes, the campaign is short and confusing, but what is there is incredible, and it's designed in such a way that it just shows you the possibilities and unique adventures that you can have in the game. And yeah, okay, the physics can be janky sometimes, and there were many instances where I got my gun stuck on doorways or had weird collisions. But this is the only game I have ever played where you can literally pick up an enemy, shoot them in the head, and then throw the body at another enemy to knock them down. This is the only game where I can push a box into a space that I can then use for cover. And yes, the minigames are a bit forced and feel crappy add-ons sometimes, but they're fun and they add some much needed replayability and longevity to a game that sorely needed it. Especially coming from Boneworks, where much of the replayability came from either third-party add-ons or by replaying certain sections of the campaign over again. At first, I was really disappointed with the game, I honestly was. I expected more from the hype to all hell sequel of one of the most interesting VR games of all time. But after beating the game and reflecting on my experiences, I'm not nearly as disappointed as I was. Bonelab is seriously some of the most fun I've ever had in a long time. It is a phenomenal add-on to any VR game library, and while it shows some cracks in some areas, it is by no means a bad game. The experiences of this game are some of the best I've ever had in VR, let alone video games in general. Bonelab is a worthy successor to Boneworks, and I can't wait to mess with it more, especially with its built-in mod support, many mini-games, and fantastic physics engine. Thank you so much for watching. I know that this video really isn't my usual style of content, so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to do more videos like this in the future, so consider this video a trial run of sorts. Let me know what you think of it. Other than that though, have a great day. See you soon.